Hello everyone, it's Comfort Beach Ambition. Today we're going to make a continuation from the previous episode where we learned about the introduction to super globals and we worked with the uh, the server super global where we learned that it's used to access the paths, the locations, and the methods, and some other things related to a server on a server to be precisely. So in this episode, we're going to learn about these three that we left: the request, get, and post. So we need to understand all of these. So we're going to start with request. So we simply we simply use the request super global to uh, we simply use it to find out a method that is being used to access a server, or that is being used to access a PHP server. Yeah, so the server can either be accessed in get or post method. But we can't just say that. We need to understand what we mean when we say get or post. Yeah, so that's why I'm here. So I'm going to explain about get and post methods. That Yeah, the get and post methods. Okay, so I really don't think if it can make sense going direct to request without understanding what get and post methods simply mean. Okay, so let's get to understand that. We're going to start with a get super global, or let's just say a get request or get method, and then lastly we're going to talk about the post. Okay, so what you need to understand about these two is that a get method a get method has to do with the URL bar. It has to do with the URL bar, and everything that is put in the get request is accessed is can be accessed by anyone. But we need to differentiate that from the post method. So now, what's a post method? So a post method is a request method that we use to access a web server. Now, the only difference between a post and a get method is that with the get method has to do with the first thing here. The get method has to do with the things that we do in the URL bar here, in this URL bar here, and all the information that is there, that is sent on a get request, can be accessed by anyone and it's not confidential. Now, on a post method is another method that we can use to access a server. Now, with the post method or the post request, the data is not shared to anyone else. It's not shared to anyone else, and it can never be accessed by a third party or by another individual. So that's what you have to know here. And the information is never sent in the URL bar when you're dealing with the post method. Okay, so now let me show you a real world example. You see, so we have billions of posts on Facebook here. So I'm just scrolling here. So let's say I want to click on this one. I want to click. So if I click on this one, I want you to take note of what will happen. So take note of the URL bar here. For now, it's just showing web.facebook.com. But if I click on it, it's going to show something like photo and then question mark FBID, something like that. Okay, so take note of it. I've clicked on it. You see, here we have photo and then we have FBID. So now a, uh, a get parameter has been put here. So here we have FBID, we have question mark FBID, and this ID is now used to access the content of this post. So there from your server, you just have to set like whenever this is requested for, this FBID is requested for, you need to display everything. So what you have to do before displaying everything is you need to access each and every value. Each You need to access the value that it equates to, or what it is assigned to. So for now, it is assigned to this one. This post is assigned to this one, and then we're going to see the comments by this post. So if I try to go to, if I try to click on another post here, we're going to find that we're going to have a unique FBID. So let me click on this one. Okay, so here you see we have another one. This one is this. Yeah, so here this FBID here is the get parameter, FBID, and then the value now it is assigned to this unique ID here. And then we have another get parameter here. So get parameters are separated by an ampersand sign. So here we are. So we have an ampersand sign. We also have set, and then we also have another get parameter by the name of set, which is equals to this one. So uh, a lot of websites do make use of the get parameters, or the get, yeah, the get super globals. Yeah, so now let's go to the post method. Okay, so with the post method, mostly they are used on forms, like whenever you are making a registration or whenever you're trying to submit any sensitive information on a website, the data is sent through a post method. The reason why it is sent through a post method is because a post method doesn't send information onto the URL bar here. Okay, so enough of these explanations. Let's go back to the code. So we're going to start with we are going to start with the get. We're going to start with Okay, so we're going to start with the request super global here from the code. Okay, we're going to start with it. Okay, let me set my timer. Okay, so we start. Okay, so I'm just going to do nothing here but design a basic, just a basic HTML form here, a basic HTML form here, and with the title, let's give it a title. Uh, I'm going to name it uh registration, registration, registration form, and then here we're going to come up with a body. Okay, Okay, so now, like I said during the start of this course, if you don't have any basic understanding about HTML, I would advise you go back to learn HTML, and then you'll be home and right to follow us up. Okay, so now what I'm just going to do here is I'm going to create a form, an HTML form, by using the tag form. Okay, so I'm going to specify, I'm going to say uh, method equals to, for now let's start with get. So method is equals to get, so which means all of the data that you are going to submit on this form is going to be sent through the get method, and then we are going to use the get super global from PHP to access that information. Yeah, and then action, let's say we just wanted to uh, just redirect this current page, so we're just going to leave it blank. So I'm going to add some break here, and then some input. Let's say we have input type is equals to text of type text. So this is just a basic input field that is going to allow us to input a phone, the full name. So I'm going to say placeholder is equals to full name. Okay, and then we're going to give it a name. So this name here is what you're going to, this name here on the form, it is what we're going to make use of when we want to access the value of it. So name, we're just going to give it full underscore name. Kindly never make a mistake of leaving any spaces. Okay, and then let's say another one, let's add another one, give it email, and then I'm going to name it email. Okay, so here I'm going to say of this one should be of type password, yeah, since it's going to create to contain some obscuring text. So I'm going to say password. password, and then let's name it password. Let's name it password. Yeah. Okay, so and lastly here, what I'm just going to add is a button that is going to be clickable. Button type is equals to submit. Yeah, it's a submit button since it's sending this form information. So let's also give it a name. Going to name it submit btn here. Okay, so guys, let's take a note of what will be happening here. So I'm going to open that file again. Okay, so I forgot one thing. Going to say register. Let's name it register, and then let's also name it register btn so that it makes more sense. Okay, so here guys, I want you to take note of what will be happening here. Okay, so let me give this file a single name. Let me just say episode 14. Let me just name it episode 14 so that makes sense. Yeah, so I've named it episode 14, or maybe let me just name it EP14. I don't want it to contain any spaces for this practice so that you guys can observe everything that we'll be doing here. So 14. So let me refresh it. Okay. So episode 14. Yeah, at least now it does. Yeah, at least now it does make a lot of sense. Okay, guys. So I just want to. So for now, this is the file. We have the PHP tools folder here, and then so it's just written like this. Since this is how Chrome handles the spacings, and then we also have episode 14.php. Okay, okay. So now here you're going to see. So if I do fill in something like let's say let's say comfort Sambeshi email with levels 04 at gmail.com, and then the password 1234567 8. When I do submit this form, we're going to find that the information will be sent into the URL bar. So let's do that. Yeah, so this is what I mean. I've clicked on it, and then here we have uh, the file name here, episode 14.php, and then we have a question mark. We have the full name, showing the full name. What is full name is equals to comfort plus Tambesh. So when it shows a plus, it means there's a spacing. And email is equals to with level 04 at gmail.com. And password is equals to 1234567 8. And then here the register button is equals to nothing. So what's happening here is that uh it's going to so when the form is submitted, it's going to come up with some kind of parameters here. So when the form is submitted, it's going to come up with some parameters like this, like let's say file.php. This file.php, I just named it just so that you can understand, but this is not the current file to reckon with. So let's name it file sample.php, like example of a file. Let's say on this file sample.php, we have this form here. We have this form here, and then the user submits. So when the user submits, what's going to happen here is that it's going to say uh, form sample.php when the user so for now, before the user submits, it's just going to be file sample underscore.php. But when the user submits, it's going to say uh, full underscore name is equals to, and then the value that has been set there, if it's gems, and then if it's gems, and then gems border, and if there's also another field here which we have email, if the email that has been set is equals to james border at gmail, then we need to add an ampersand. So the server automatically adds an ampersand, and then it's going to be email email is equals to james at gmail.com. So all of these parameters are separated by an ampersand, but the first one always starts with a question mark. So the only parameter that has a question mark is the first parameter on the form. So here we can separate as many parameters as you want. If you wanted, you could have added like occupation. Occupation is equals to uh, developer. Developer. So that's how that's how the get method works. So all this is a get method, is a get method of a form. Okay, so now let's get back to our code. So let's say now we want to access from our code. Let's say we want to access all of this information. Like want to access the full name, uh, email, blah blah blah. Okay, so there there are two ways of either accessing the information from post or get. You could use the what's this you could use the request, or just by going direct uh to to the request super global here. Okay, so we're going to go, let's try out the server. Let's try out the server. Okay, so now, okay, so let's try out the method of using the server. No, the request, I mean, the request. So we just have to specify. Like I said in the previous episode, if we want to find anything that is related to a server, we simply use a server super global. So here we're just going to add an if statement. So we learned about an if else condition. We learned about if else conditional statements in the in one of the previous episodes. So if you don't understand the if else conditional statements, I do recommend you learn them from one of my videos. Okay, so let's say if, okay, so let's find out. Let's find out. Okay, if request dot method, if is set. Let's say if is set. Let's say if, okay, so what we're trying to do here is we want to find out if this register button is triggered. So what do we do? Or maybe we could just say if, yeah, sure, if register, if is set. So this is set function here, what it does is it just checks if a certain event is triggered. So when you say an event can be anything through the program. So an event can be uh, those actions during the form submission or anything, just a process. Let's say an event could can be a process in programming. So let's say if is set. uh, okay, so let's just say if, okay, so now let's just check if we can access this information. So we're just going to say if get, if get. Now, what do we want to find out? If get full name. So we're trying to find out if this full name here is there. So if it's there, we want to access it from here. We want to access it from here. So we're going to say echo the full name is, okay, the full name is, and then we just say get full name, and we'll be able to access it. Okay, so I'm just going to go back to the file and get rid of all the parameters for now and define if. Okay, so I'm just going to say if is set get. Okay, so this is how it works here. Like I said, I've already explained about the is set. It's used to find out if a certain event occurs. So for now, an event that you are dealing with is trying to find out if this register button is clicked on. So here we're trying to say if is set get full name. Okay, so now there are two ways of accessing this information here. You can either just say underscore get, or by just using sorry, excuse. Yeah. Okay, so you could just say request, request, okay, request full name, request full name. So here you can also, you could either use any of uh, get or post super global to access this information. So here, if you wanted, you could have just written if is set request full name and then display as something. So for instance, let's say comfort uh charm besh and then uh at gmail.com the password. So see, the full name is Comfort Sambesh. So if we try to check here from the get parameter, it's even able to tell to say full name is equals to Comfort Sambesh and email is equals to. So we can now access this information. So this is how we can use the request. So we can use the request method to access either get or uh, post parameter values. Yeah, so, but for now, I don't want to make use of the request. Okay, let's go direct to by just using get and post. So this mostly depends on the programmer's preference. If you want, you can be accessing the get and post values using the request here, using this request super global. But yeah, I don't have to say anything like, but depends on the developer's preference. So let's go with get. Let's go with get. Okay, so I'm just going to get rid of it and go with get. Okay, so that's how the request super global works. Okay, so now let's go to okay, before I could delete it, let's go to the get the get super global. So instead of just writing server request, so this one we may not know to say, okay, this information that you are requesting for is in post or get method. So that's the only disadvantage of using the request super global. So we need to be sure of exactly the information that we want and the method that we can access it from. So for now, let's just use get. So for now, we are sure that we want to access the information through get, and then this information is through get. So nothing will change here. It's just going to display. Okay, sorry, I've forgotten an underscore. So nothing is going to change here. It's still showing the full name is Comfort Chambesh. So we can add. Okay, let me add another one to say if is set full name, and so we can use, we just have to ensure that these events are happening at the same time, and is set or get email. So here we're going to say full name is Comfort Sambesh, and then we break, we start a new line here. So I'm just going to do a copy paste so that we spare some time. And then email, let's also access the email from the form, the email. So I'm going to say email. Yeah. So now we can access the information. Okay, so I'm just going to get rid of everything here. It's going to so I'm going to say, let's say name. This time let's try to say Zenge Svali, and then email Zenge at gmail.com, and then the password 1234567 8. Okay, so let's also access the password. I'm just going to do, I'm just going to add another validation. So here, okay, I'll explain it later. Let's also try to check if this event is also happening using the set, and then get. Let's try it. Password. Password. Yeah, so here what we're trying to do here is we're trying to find out if is set get. So what do you mean when you say is set get? We're checking from the URL here. If I do click here, we're checking from the URL. If the URL has a parameter full name and it also has a parameter password, sorry, if we're trying to check full name, if it has full name, uh, email, and the password parameters, and then if they do have, then we display the information. So here, whatever I type in here, let's say bra bra gmail.com. So we're going to find that this information here, it's going to display differently when I click the register button here, and even here at the bottom the information will change. Let me click the register here. So here we have something different. Yeah. So this is how the get method works. So let's hope I've done my best to explain about the get method. Okay, so now let's go to the post method. Okay, before you could go to the post method, if you want this get method, you can add them manually to say full name, full name. You could just come to the URL at the top here. You just add a question mark. So a question mark full name is equals to, let's say uh Ephraim, Ephraim, Ephraim Piri. So we have the first parameter. To add another one, we use a person an email. Let's say it's going to be f@gmail.com. So these emails that I'm using for the other individuals, I'm pretty sure that they're invalid. Okay, so we also add another parameter, which is password. We say uh, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So the moment I'll hit enter, we're going to find that it will be detected by the server to say it's there. So here you see I did not enter anything from the form here, but it has displayed. So that's the only disadvantage about the get method. So you can't use the get method to send any of the sensitive information. Please never do that. If you do so, the information will be vulnerable. Okay, so that's about the get super global, the request and the get super global. So now let's go to the post method now. Okay, so I'm not going to do much here. I'm just going to alter this form or just change it. Okay, so what I'm just going to do here is here. This is where we do specify the method. So here, instead of using get, let's try to use post. So now we have changed the method of submitting this information. So now we're submitting it in a post method. So let's go down here below. So now, since we're using post, we just have to check if this button is triggered. You're only going to be checking if that button is triggered. Okay, so let's add a PHP code here. Okay, so I'm going to add an if statement to say if we're going to add to check if this register button is triggered or if it's clicked. So we're going to say if is set. Uh, like I said, if you want, you could say request, and then register and then you just display something to say echo. This is a post method. This is a post method. Yes, it will still work. It will still work, but like I said in the previous explanation on some differences between just using just using get and post, and what's this by just picking yeah, I mentioned the differences between just going through get post and by just using the request only. Yeah, so this will still work, but it's not a recommended way of doing things here. I'm just going to get rid of all the get parameters here. It's not the right way. So if I do click on this form, we're going to get this is a post method. So the disadvantage about use of using the request here is that we may not know if the server is accessed through if the information we want is submitted through get or post. We may not know, so we need to be precise. We need to be direct of what we want exactly. So by that, since we have set our form to post here, instead of using this request thing here, we're just going to say underscore post register button. So we're checking if this register button is clicked on this form through the post method. So if I try to reaccess this link and click on register, it's showing this is a post method. This is a post method because it's the information is being sent in post method. So what you just have to notice here is that here we just have a clean URL without any parameters. There in get, if you paid much attention, whenever we filled in anything like comfort, chambesh, it was displaying, also it was also sending the information to this URL, but this time it's not. So that's the reason why get but the post method is more secure compared to any other methods. Okay, compared to the get method to be precisely. So now it's just displayed this is a post method. So now this is not what we want. Let's say if we want to access now this information, to access the full name, email, and the password. So here I'm just going to steal from here so that we could save our time. So I'm just going to say Control V to paste it. So here we're just going to say, or maybe let me just no, let me instead of just so here we're just going to replace all of these get with post. All these gets with post. Okay, so now let me try to reaccess this page and say comfort Chambesh email with levels 04 at gmail.com 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 and then register. You see, we are now able to display the information that has been submitted from the form. Okay, so whenever we try to resubmit the form from the information that has been submitted through the post method, we always get a warning to say this page that you are looking for, use the information that you entered. It might cause action to look and to be repeated, something like that. So here we are able to display the information. So with the post method, this information can only be accessed from the server side only, and it will never go to any nanny server, and it will never be shared to anybody else apart from the one who knows it. Apart from, so this server is only shared in between you, so this information is only shared to a server and not to anybody else, which means your server will keep your information privately and you can access it later on. But if you use get, just never use get. So if you use get, always know that your information will be vulnerable against the cyber attackers. So that's all about the request, get, and the post super globals. And I'm sure we have now covered the PHP forms. So in the next episode, we're going to have a look at the PHP regular expressions, and then we're going to start looking at some other advanced PHP. And that's all. That's all I had for this tutorial session. And see you in the next episode, guys. Cheers.